Hello, everyone. This is Carol Dimitrov with OPA Outreach, and we are really pleased today to be talking about the review of the 2022 forecast. A year ago, in December of 2021, there was a panel of astrologers that got together on the OPA Live platform to speak about the up-and-coming astrological cycles for the new year to come. And for the first time, most of the panel will meet with us this year and review in hindsight and compare the contents from the published OPA Live video. And we also are going to be revisiting the forecast from the perspective of factual events that can help better understand, learn about the reliability of forecasting techniques. And again, overall, gain a better understanding of the powers and limitations of astrology. And we have with us tonight Maurice Fernandez, Julija Simas, and Oner. And Julija is from Australia, Oner is from Turkey, and Maurice is from beautiful Sedona, Arizona. So with that being said, just to give you a quick introduction about each of those astrologers while more people are popping on, we'll go with ladies first. Julija Simas is the founder, motivator, and designer, and also claims to be the instigator of the CIA, the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. And her vision for that has been really amazing, and it has grown so much. But she wanted to contribute to the rising of consciousness, global awareness, unified thought, and a better world through a fascinating world of astrology. And she has completed a diploma in applied astrology from Astrosynthesis in Melbourne. And she wrote her finishing thesis on the Anima Mundi in 2005. She does incredible CIA events, workshops, conferences, and retreats around the globe and in Australia. And she has just been really a great friend of OPA, so we welcome her. And I will be posting her link for her website coming up on that recording link. And then I'd like to introduce Oner. And Oner, many of you are familiar with Oner as well. He is also the OPA satellite for Turkey and has done an incredible job with that. So Oner, we of course thank you so much for your work in that. Oner has actually written, first of all, he's a professional astrologer, a consultant, a trainer, researcher, and author. He's written 39 books in Turkish and has 14 that have been published in English and in many other languages. He also has the Astro Art School of Astrology, which he founded. He also founded Astrology Day in Turkey in 2012. So Oner is a very, very busy man, and he still has the time to be with us this evening. So Oner, welcome. He has a diploma program, and he does teach both in English and in Turkish. And then last but not least, we have Maurice Fernandez. And Maurice is really been regarded as just an amazing astrology teacher and author. And he offers in-depth study programs for all levels, as well as free videos and articles. You'll be able to see much of that on his website when I send you that link. And Maurice also has online workshops. He does astrology conferences, beginner study programs, and also the diploma program for evolutionary astrology, which I would highly recommend. And Maurice has also written several books, Neptune in the 12th house in Pisces, and numerous other books which are available, and information on his books are available on his website. So Maurice, I think you're going to be going first, and I will
Thank you,
begin.
Carol.
You're welcome.
Can you all hear me? So yeah, we're really excited to do this particular presentation. I think it's the first time that such a review is done in such an organized fashion. And I think it's really important for the future of our profession. to look back at our work and to, to be able to have a discussion about it, to explore the strengths and weaknesses and learn as we go. Because quite often, astrologers present their forecast, publish articles, and then we keep moving on, the next year and the next conjunction and the next, and we don't often look back to see how amazing the work has been and how relevant things happen to be, or sometimes how we missed the targets. So my intention with this is definitely to use this as a learning tool, and to also understand that, to recognize the power of astrology, how far and how amazing it can get, how precise it can be, but also acknowledge its limitations. So I don't think there is any astrologer that I know that ever had 100% accuracy in any prediction. And that tells us that either, we're still learning and we haven't figured everything out yet, or that there are some things that we will never be able to fully control and know ahead of time, because the universe, is smarter and beyond our own mind and brains. So Carol introduced us. There was another presenter, Adam Ellenbass, who was with us on the panel last year, but he didn't make it to this particular presentation. So we'll focus on our 3 presentations as well, but touch on what he delivered. So let's begin. Once again, thank you all for joining this and for supporting this effort. And I hope this is going to be custom, something that many astrologers will integrate and do for their work wherever they are working with predictions in particular. So let's begin with Oner. And what we're going to do as we go through these events is to, first of all, focus on the specific OPA live event that took place last December 2021 about the forecast of the following year, 2022. So we're going to focus on the articles that were published in the magazine, as well as the live event that was on video and posted online. I will also add some additional anecdotes and notes that were outside the particular OPA live, but summarized some of the predictions as well. So because the OPA live was, very limited by time, everyone just had 20 minutes. There are some things that some of the predictions that were made, on different platforms. So for example, Oner shared a video that he did on TV about a particular event. So we're going to include some different presentations, while our main focus remain the actual OPA live presentation. I hope that makes sense, but you'll see as we go. So one of the interesting techniques that Oner shared in his prediction is that he focused almost exclusively on the Aries equinox chart of 2022. So that was the chart for March 2022, and how that sets the tone for the following months and for the full year. And, you know, I basically took some of the screenshots about what he wrote, and obviously he also looked at the transits prior to the equinox to analyze what would happen, in the first 3 months of the year. So, when we see this chart, what was so powerful during the year 2022 from a transit perspective? We had the great Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. Saturn, all year was in Aquarius and came close to another square to Uranus in Taurus. Even though they were not exact, the square was on and off, still relevant in the course of this year. Uranus, most of the year, especially the second half of the year, Uranus was on the North Node in Taurus. And then Pluto, making its last territorial conquest of Capricorn. And of course, the Pluto return of the United States. So these were some of the transits in the background, but we didn't, Oner is focusing specifically on the chart of the spring equinox. And I think, this is really a nice lesson for all of us to see how powerful that chart can be. Another thing that we added to this particular meeting is that each one of us has separately done a video about the new year, 2023. So even though, most of our focus here is going to be on the review of last year, we're going to also touch on some of the highlights for the year to come, just because it's fun. So I wanted to quote some of his writing, and this is taken from the journal that was published, as I mentioned, in December 21. So he speaks about the chart of the equinox. Since Jupiter is in Pisces, unafflicted by malefics, and is oriental, which means it rises before the sun and it's direct and strong, the Sultan, or the president, will be happy while the dignity and honor of the leading people, administrators, and viceroys, prime minister, increase. Since Jupiter, traditional ruler of Pisces, is the dispositor of Mercury, also in Pisces. So we're looking here at Jupiter in the 10th house, conjunct Mercury in Pisces. The president or people in authority will honor the people signify, already mentioned. Further, the president will be informed by mercurial kind of people who will be the president, probably in his travels or in his action and important decisions. So this is interesting that this chart is set for Washington. So it's very particular to the equinox that happened in the United States. And so affairs that relate to the United States are going to be, more important. So we know that it was a relatively good year for Biden, and especially as we looked at the midterm elections in the United States, some of the comments, this is taken from the press. Voters were kind to the current leaders, and that means to those who were already in power, not just the president. To the surprise of many pundits and pollsters, America's midterm election on November 8 have delivered good news so far for the Democrat. That is unusual in historical terms. At the halfway mark between president and election, voters routinely give the incumbent party a beating. Biden's rebound is a marker not only of a president whose great skill is persistence, but a leader whose foes have underestimated him. Legislatively, Biden managed to secure a passage of a long list of bills in these 2 years, including infrastructure spending and climate change mitigation and healthcare. So, Oner, if you have some comments about this particular prediction. You're muted.
Thank you, Maurice, for all these explanations and for your attention. Thank you very much. It's really very good. And yes, the year lord, actually, which is the ruler of the ascendant, is in the 10th house, Mercury. Traditionally, actually, Mercury is not in good situation in Pisces, but the ruler of the 10th house, Jupiter, is in Pisces as well, which is in his rulership. So Jupiter supports Mercury, and all the public attention is on the administrators, or the president or the presidency. And because Jupiter is very powerfully placed there, that means the president will be effective this year in general. And also in modern astrology, we use Neptune as the ruler of Pisces. So two rulers of Pisces are together as the ruler of the MC. Is a powerful placement. Additionally, the sun is in the 10th, close to the 11th house, which we can also count them in the 11th. So these are powerful placement for the man in power in general.
Okay. Beautiful. So here's another very fascinating prediction. The domicile ruler of the 11th is Mars, which is also the significator of soldiers of the king, president, placed in the 9th house. We may conclude that the soldiers will be in the far places, foreign countries, placed anew or remaining where they are. Mars conjunct Saturn in Aquarius in the 9th house may be an indicator of war in far places, probably with countries that fall under the rulership of Aquarius, such as Russia, or with the Western country. Aquarius is a Western sign, and I'd like your explanation on that. Since Mars is in Aquarius with Saturn, this war may be fought through flying objects such as airplane or cyber war or drones. I hope this is part of the Cold War as it already happened before. Since Mars is afflicted by Saturn, there may be big problems and detriments through this war, be it physical, hot or cold. So let's look at the chart again. So he speaks of the 11th house, Aries, and the dispositor, Mars, is in the 9th house of foreign countries. And because Aquarius is Russia, he brought in Russia. And this again was, published in December and written in November, way before any of that really, came to a head. So, Oner, why the 11th house would be the soldiers?
Because this is the second from the 10th house. So this is what support the king's action. 11th house is the house of parliament in mundane astrology, as well as the soldiers of the king in ultimate astrology.
Beautiful. And so in some ways, the war is fought, obviously Russia and the Ukraine is the largest conflict, but it's also fought on the ground. It was not only in air. So I guess, this is hard to be so specific, but it's both air and ground. We have many soldiers on the ground as well. And it's also interesting that you speak about a cyber war. If we speak of this from a perspective of the United States did not send soldiers. They sent resources, they sent equipment, technology, but they didn't send people. So in a way, it is a war that happens, far away. And from an American point of view, it is mostly done remotely. So we can see perhaps that that's what the Aquarian quality is. Would you agree?
Yes, I would. Aquarius means also technology. And of course, Mars-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius affected the countries under the rulership of Aquarius. Of course, first of all, Russia. Although this conjunction is not exact here in this chart, we count this like an exact because we always put Mars-Saturn conjunction in a chart, as well as Jupiter and Venus conjunction, and the 10th house where Jupiter falls. Also, we see that a bit later, Venus was there. So it will be helpful to the president or the man in power in general. So as you said, yes, I agree with the Aquarius is related with technology, all the equipments. And also we see Mars-Uranus square here. And this is also another indicator of technological war or that kind of thing. And Uranus placed in Taurus, which is also related with ground money in general. Yeah,
and money.
So, sure.
A lot of money is sent to support either side. Now, the two questions is, why is Russia Aquarius? Is it the country, because Russia was established in December 1990, modern Russia. So how do you relate it to Aquarius?
In traditional astrology, there are some rulerships of the zodiac signs. They divide all the geographic, maps into 12 signs. So the Russia and Iran, that place is under the rulership of Aquarius in general, starting from England as Aries. So this is a kind of dividing the world map into 12 zodiac signs. Yeah,
it's interesting. Is it the geodetic system?
Yeah, it is.
Because the geodetic starts with Greenwich at 0 Aries.
Yeah.
But then it goes east to Aries, and then the Middle East is Taurus, and India is Gemini. So you're going the other way around.
Yeah, actually, yes, there are some different systems, but in traditional astrology in general, even in the 20th century, there are some other English astrologers divide the geographical map into the signs. So they are mostly giving Aquarius to Russia.
Okay. Well, it worked this time. Another question is, you wrote this in November, so a few months before the war started, but the chart is in March after the war started, because the war started at the end of February.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you saw in this chart that there's a war, and the war had started a few weeks prior.
Yeah, actually, I had another prediction in a TV program about this war and relating on the geographical charts again. And of course, following of the Vladimir Putin's chart, with the Russia chart. So it can be done with the other transits.
Okay.
Yes, you can also look at the ingress charts beforehand, I mean 2021, to check it, or the last ingress chart, which was on December 2021, to see
So you
the
would look
clues.
at the solstice,
Yes, sure.
December 21st.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So another very interesting forecast. You know, I was editing the magazine at the time, and when I read this prediction, I was like, what is he talking about? But here it is. Conditions for women. We are advised to look for the condition of women from a Venus and her place in the ingress chart by Bonatti. Venus is placed in Aquarius, where she is peregrine, does not have any familiarity there. She's like a foreigner, which indicates weakness in the 9th house. Venus is also besieged between Mars and Saturn, which indicates that she's very afflicted. This is an indicator of affliction, of hardship for women figure, especially young women, signified by Venus, abroad in foreign countries and traveling, and in the air as she is placed in Aquarius. According to ancients, Venus is the significator of venereal things, women, marriage, engagement. Venus is also related to pleasure, plays, and games, music, and the arts. So these problematic conditions of Venus signify less money and harm from pleasures and women. And we know that soon after this equinox chart, in May, June 2022, in the United States, the Supreme Court eliminated the federal constitutional right to abortion in June, which basically meant that every state can choose whether to allow abortions and at different terms. So this was indeed for many women a very surprising violation of their rights, and a feeling that the state, the government, is controlling their biology and pregnancy process. So it was an incredibly controversial event in the United States that affected very much so the condition of women, at least in the United States. And then we know also in Iran, the protests following Mahsa Amini's brutal death, following the fact that she was arrested without a head covering, leading to protest and women's right activism that led to the death of many people. So both of these very intense events that led to a lot of protest were around women's rights and women's causes and the violation of. So once again, let's look at the chart, and we see what Oner was talking about, Venus here sandwiched, besieged by Mars and Saturn. And so we see, you know, the patriarchal influence trying to control and some using force and brutality in Iran to control women's right, Venus in Aquarius. So like I said, personally, when I was reading that, I was very surprised. I didn't know what that means. Like all women in the world are going to go through a crisis. It sounded very strange, but you know, life works in strange ways. So that was a very interesting and relevant prediction, I believe. Carol, are there some comments? I don't know if there are some questions.
Yes, there are. First of all, as Hassan was saying that in the Encyclopedia of Medical Astrology by Howard Leslie, that they actually, under the specific article, under the article Nations, it does have Russia under Aquarius. So that was a comment that we were talking about earlier. And then Julia is also saying that during this period of time, Brittany Griner was also locked up in Russia.
Right.
So we have that to consider in that category, if you will, of things. And let's see, there's a few others, but they're just more comments than questions. So
let's continue. Some of the economy, the nodes were in Scorpio Aquarius all year. And obviously the talk of the day was the economy and money and resources and access to that. So Oner writes, the ruler of the second house in the Ingress chart, the moon is peregrine in Libra and also in a critical degree 29, which is called the anaretic degree in traditional astrology. This indicates something is about to end. The moon is about to enter Scorpio, where she's in her fall. So her condition is about to change from peregrine to fall. The moon is also void, of course, and placed in the 5th house, squaring Pluto. And is placed in the 5th squaring Pluto, which is placed in the 8th. These are problematic indicator for the economic condition of the public, as well as the condition of children, since the moon is in the 5th. And her dispositor, Venus, besieged by the malefics in the 9th. So once again, here he speaks about the moon in the 5th house at that very tail end of Libra, 2953, square Pluto. And the moon rules the 2nd house of resources in Cancer. And so, and another note that he makes for the US Pluto return, since the Pluto return of the United States is in the 2nd house of the country, the part of, and opposing the part of fortune at 26 Cancer, this is another significator for a financial crisis. In this first Pluto return chart for Washington, D.C., we see Pluto placed in the 7th house of one-to-one relations with other countries, as well as agreement, partnership, but also opposition, competition, and open enemies. So the possibility of serious financial crisis, natal placement in the 2nd house, may result from one-to-one competition in trade, or this may direct the US to go into war because of the trade competition and financial crisis, as with the ongoing adversities with China. And of course, we know, a report here from the IMF, the global economy activity experienced broad-based and sharper than expected slowdown, with inflation higher than seen in several decades. The cost of living crisis, tightening financial condition in most regions, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the lingering COVID pandemic all weigh heavily on the outlook. So yeah, I think everyone touched on the economy and how the economy would be seriously affected. Here's a prediction. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have a question that Kevin is asking. Is their placement of Black Moon Lilith considered in the chart?
Did you consider Black Moon Lilith, Oner?
Did I consider what?
The Black Moon Lilith.
No, I didn't. I didn't consider it. I just talked about the moon, not Black Lilith.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So now, looking at a forecast about health, epidemic are under the rulership of these two. We see the South Node in the 6th house, which is also malefic in traditional astrology. If the South Node is in the 6th in Scorpio, it signifies that pleurisy will come to man, and infirmity occurring to the chest, and catarrh in the throat. And the ruler Scorpio Mars indicate fevers and pestilence. Mars, rulers of the 6th, is placed in Aquarius, conjunction to Venus, Saturn, which signify detriment is going to man. So the illnesses may come from air and human in general. Since Saturn is stronger than Mars, illnesses will be determined either through melancholic or pestilential illnesses. As Saturn rules the 8th, should be careful about general rules given by health organizations. So in this case, it seems like, at least on a general global level, that the COVID death continued to decline rather than rise, but they were still affecting the lungs in most cases. But it seemed like it was not as bad as it sounded. Do you agree? What do you think, Oner?
Yeah, actually, yes, we can say that. Although this chart is cast for the United States in general, yes, we can say that. But if we look around the world in general, for example, China, all the the illnesses, all the pandemic conditions, they are still ongoing.
Yeah.
So the Moon Pluto square also indicates that since we have Pluto in the 8th, and the 8th house is also the house of death, and Moon square Pluto means the health of the public would not be good enough. So this could also indicate the situation in general.
Okay. What sign is China in your system?
I cannot be sure enough, but
Okay.
I will check it. I cannot remember at the moment, but I will check. Yes, I remember. Libra.
Okay. So
Libra.
the moon in Libra, maybe,
Maybe.
square Pluto gives a reference to that. Because
maybe,
the crisis is happening now in China.
Yeah, but of course their natal chart is also having difficult transits, and they will take another Plutonic transit in the new year. We know that. Thank you.
On the moon.
Yeah, on the moon.
So another forecast about weather conditions. Ambu Masharma advises us to get the state of the rains from Mars. Mars is in Aquarius with Venus in the 9th. According to Abu Mashar, if Mars were in the house of Saturn, it would be a judgment of little rain. If Mars were in Aquarius, it signifies burden and tribulation that are going to come to man in that revolution, and that snow will be abundant and rain and cold in their own season. As the dispositor of Mars and Saturn is also in Aquarius, in latitude, declination is southern. Bonatti says, if Saturn were in Aquarius and his latitude were northern, it signifies a multitude of rain and severity of cold and frost. And if the latitude were southern, it signifies scarcity of water, fountains and rivers. And elsewhere, when Saturn is in Aries sign, signifies severity of cold with many clouds, strong frost, corruption of the air, complexion and thunder, and coruscation of lightning and impediment of much rain. Traditional astrology, malefics together in air indicate snow, frigid shadow of the air and its corruption, the blowing of the wind and destruction of tree and palms. Earthquakes and floods are known from Saturn, as they are both placed in air signs these are possibly the western side of the country, or in general, the Western people. The square aspect between the planets in Aquarius with Uranus in Taurus, strong earthquake are likely for the whole world generally. Also, crash of power grids and blackout are possible. So this has been definitely a relatively colder year and wet year, even though there were places where there was drought. On a global level, it seems like it was wet more than usual. So colder, December 2022, a colder than average end of year flavor the north. Record-breaking cold is forecast to spread across the United States this winter. Winter storm with historic snow for the Great Lakes. In Australia, spring was the coldest in decades for parts of Australia. A rare feat considering the influence of climate change ensures nearly every season is now warmer than usual. Australia, record-breaking weather, very wet and sometimes very hot year. So it's interesting, Oner, that on the one hand, we see that this cold weather happened and wet, but it didn't happen west. You wrote that it would happen to Western people, but it happened on the east coast of the United States and the east coast of Australia, which is an eastern country. So I wonder if that east-west direction is something to talk about.
Yeah, sure. We are not meteorologists, and we are relying on the, what is written from the ancients. And we are actually talking about the whole earth in general, because these charts are casted for a specific location, but the placement of the planets are always in the same sign wherever you cast the chart. Only the houses are changing. And Aquarius is a chilly sign according to traditional astrologers. So it's a colder sign. And Mars and Saturn together in that cold sign with Venus. So that means the weather would be very cold. Mm-hmm. Actually, this is valid for this time of year as well. Of course, we are in the north, and we know that January and February is generally cold. But I think this year also may be a bit colder than the last year, especially when we have a new moon in Aquarius on the 21st of January this year. And the ancient astrologers were also looking at the Sun-Saturn conjunction, especially in cold signs such as Aquarius, for example, or Capricorn. So we have also this year in 2023, around mid-February, we have Sun-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius as well. So yes, the weather forecasting is a difficult branch of astrology.
So
we do have a few people chiming in on that also. Maria is saying there was a big earthquake in November on the eclipse in California, and California has been far colder and wetter this winter. Yes, another big earthquake this past month, blackouts. The East Coast in Europe have been unseasonably warm the winter, except for the snow cyclone in the Northeast. So the weather's been kind of crazy everywhere. Yes.
But particularly wet and cold. And of course, we can think of Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces as well, adding to the wetness.
You're right.
So another forecast, end of 2022, on the one hand, you started saying that Biden may feel better, but here you mentioned he may not complete his term and Kamala Harris will rise to leadership. So that was in the video. That didn't happen, at least not yet. It's still.
Yeah, actually, I said by the end of 2022 or by the beginning of 2023, especially around Sun-Saturn conjunction on the moon of the US chart.
Okay.
So I I also predicted it because Biden has some difficult transits from his 12th house, 6 to 12, and eclipses was on his, planets,
Mars.
especially Mars. Then now around this time,
Yeah.
Mercury. So there would be some problems related with some mental illnesses or that kind of things, that mercurial things as well. So I was talking about this.
Okay. So it's still possible.
It's still possible.
It's, early 2023 or end of 2022.
And
well, let's hope for the best, because we,
okay.
We want everyone to be healthy.
Sure, that's for sure.
But
and
here,
also,
go ahead.
Just Kamala Harris has her Saturn in 28 Aquarius, almost exactly on the moon of the US chart. So I would say that probably she will have some responsibilities. You see, the 28 Aquarius, her Saturn.
Saturn is 28, and
20,
Pluto is squaring her full moon.
Yeah, and in the US chart, the moon is placed in 27 Aquarius. So around Sun-Saturn conjunction, probably she will have some responsibilities on her, but we will see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The last item, broadcasted in May 2022 about cryptocurrency crash. So I will share this video from Oner. It's a short video. It's in Turkish, so you'll practice your Turkish, but it is subtitled. No, it's not this one.
Garip bir şey tabii, bir önce yapmış olduğumuz Hande'nin.
So can you all see and hear everything?
Yes, I can see.
Yes.
So try to focus on the subtitles. We can go back to this. So this is broadcasted on December 30th, as the guest person here reviews an earlier prediction that Oner made in May 2022.
Katıldı. Burada selam olsun kendisine. Programda Öner Döşer dedi ki 8 Kasım'da kripto çökecek dedi. Bir daha alalım isterseniz o videoyu. Bir daha bakalım.
Dijital paraların burada bir düşüş göstereceğini tahmin etmiştik zaten. Ne zaman? 30 Nisan'daki güneş tutulması Uranüs gezegeniyle dizilimde olmuştu.
Burada da söylemiştik.
Dolayısıyla burada da bunu konuştuk, tarih verdik. Şimdi bir tarih daha vereyim. 8 Kasım'daki ay tutulması yine Uranüs'le olacak. Oraya da ben şimdiden dikkat çekeyim. Yani gene
ne olacak?
senin programında ilk kez söyleyeyim. Benzer bir kripto para krizi de orada var.
Evet.
So this basically says, if you didn't read the subtitles, that on the eclipse of November 8, there will be a crash or a crisis with cryptocurrency. And that exactly happened. The FTX filed for bankruptcy protection on November 11, when the firm ran out of money after the cryptocurrency equivalent of a bank run. The collapse of the crypto's second largest exchange has garnered worldwide attention and prompted worry in the crypto industry. By November 8, exactly on the eclipse date, amid the bankruptcy, the Bankman is his name, the name of the guy who was running this company. His net worth was estimated to have dropped 94% in a day, from billions to millions, according to Bloomberg Billionaire Index, the largest one-day drop in the index history. On November 11, the Bloomberg Billionaire Index considered Bankman-Fried to have no material wealth. The empire built by Bankman-Fried was once compared to titans of finance, just like Morgan and Buffett. and they collapsed last week after a run on deposit, left his crypto exchange with 8 billion shortfall. So all this happened exactly on that date. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kudos on this very precise date. So you relied mostly on Uranus being on the eclipse?
Yeah, because it worked for the in the former time, and again I had predicted it in the same TV program, so I had given a new time spans, and for the 2023, let's focus on 2 eclipses, which one of is on May 5, 2023. It will be also in alignment with Uranus. So
Do you want to show it? Do you have a slide for it?
Yes, if you want, I can show it.
Briefly, we don't have a lot of time, but
Okay, so maybe later I can do it. I don't want to take your time. But on May 5, 2023, we will have an eclipse in alignment with Uranus. And by 28 October 2023, we will have another eclipse, but a bit later, we will have Mars-Uranus opposition. So by the end of October and in the November 2023, we may have some other cryptocurrency crisis as well. So we should be careful about this.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So going now over some of my statements, looking back at my reports, I see that I was very philosophical. I was not as matter of fact as Oner, but here are some interesting reflections. So about Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, about Uranus and North Node, we have a unique opportunity to embark on an extraordinary adventure to free our spirits. It's a time of vast opening where we sail open seas and risk going beyond the confine of security. Many of us will dare think bigger and take risk. It's a time of adventure. The promise of this conjunction is that nothing is impossible, that there's magic in everything, and that the gates of the great beyond open under these auspices. Will this planetary alignment manifest in extraordinary invention, new realization, daring new venture, and newfound freedoms, particularly in the context of a world emerging from lockdowns? Jupiter-Neptune represents a naturally optimistic energy, the reliance of goodwill and trust in life. So it's interesting that this kind of very expansive transit coincided with the emergence of the James Webb telescope that brought images from the far reaches of the cosmos in such high quality and resolution that really brought the magic of the stars. And so, much of this sailing, not open seas, but sailing open cosmos, which is very Jupiter-Neptune as well. So NASA named the telescope the innovation of the year in aerospace technology. In the field of forming stars, it can peak 13 billion years back in time. If any of you has not seen some of these pictures, it's magical indeed. But beyond that, this, I'm going to get back to this chart later. There's a slide that's missing. I just want to address another touch on this, and that's the combination of the Jupiter-Neptune with Uranus on the North Node promises critically important cultural, technological, and political development because it is in Taurus. We can expect advances or even breakthrough in the economic system, perhaps new technologies that can help sustainability in the use of mining resources. Combining sky and earth, we may witness further development in the mining of celestial bodies. Uranus brings technology into the human body with the potential of advancing controversial use of computer microchip to enhance biological functions. We can speculate a time to advance bionic human further into collective consciousness, engendering both health benefits and enhanced physical capacities at the risk of ill-intended manipulations. So it's interesting that there has been breakthroughs in cancer treatment. Scientists have reported progress on several fronts of the battle against cancer. A team led by Professor Jones, pediatric brain tumor biology at the Institute of Cancer, worked on the company of benevolent AI to use artificial intelligence tool to come up with new drug combination to diffuse intrinsic tumors and condition incurable otherwise in childhood brain cancer. This was also the year of nuclear fusion, a major breakthrough. This milestone moves us one significant step closer to powering our society with zero carbon fusion energy, as it is reported. Now, as far as the previous statement about Jupiter and opening the boundaries, there has been a rise in small business entrepreneurship that has led the US enjoy since the pandemic. The number of new business applications jumped 24% in 2020, 23% last year. And while filings have come down this year, they remain elevated compared to the year before the pandemic. So we see that this optimism, and despite all the, the war and the economic difficulties, there is a surge in people taking risk and starting new businesses and living on hope, goodwill, adventure, and faith. So that's one aspect of that. AI for artists. Artificial intelligence is opening up new possibilities for businesses and households. And now text-to-image generator are giving everyone from artist to urban planner to reconstructive surgeon a new tool to help visualize ideas. The company DALLE2, which OpenAI released in July, looks at hundreds of millions of images to turn text prompt written by users into images. So basically, you type, whatever text, landscape, lunar, and the AI produces images that reflect whatever you're plugging in. So that's kind of a breakthrough in arts and technology and arts, which is very much in the line of Uranus in Taurus and the Jupiter-Neptune in Pisces. Now, on another level, looking at what happened in end of February, the triple conjunction at 27 Capricorn, along with the new moon in Pisces in early March 2022, I want to show you this quick video. So if we speak about a contraction now, and if we speak about addressing financial matters with the North Node in Taurus and the ruler in Capricorn retrograde, there will definitely be corrective measures. These corrective measures to counterbalance inflation, bubbles, can be measures that are implemented willingly, as an act of choice, as a conscious decision to mitigate the excesses, or it can be, again, a shocking bubble burst, a crash, financial crash of sorts. And it seems like the timing for that is not too far ahead. I'm looking at the end of February and the beginning of March with very, very dramatic alignments. As I mentioned, Venus, Mars, Pluto will all be in the sign of Capricorn. But as they move into Capricorn, they reach that critical degree, 27 degrees Capricorn, which happens to be a Mars exaltation degree. So Mars is very strong on the 27 degree of Capricorn, and Mars has to do with action, aggression, confrontation. And so it has to do with doing something about a situation. It has to do with dominance. And since it is in Capricorn, it definitely will involve, leaders and political parties, locally, nationally, in each country, and internationally, between countries. So this climaxes at the new moon, early March. This is basically happening March 3rd, 2022. There's a new moon conjunct Jupiter and Neptune, not too far. And there's this triple conjunction in Capricorn. So Mars and Venus represent in themselves the need for balance, the need to find an equilibrium between change and stability, between us and others, trade, prices, everything that has to do with value and cost, the cost of living, relates to Venus and Mars as well as Pluto. So we can expect that by the end of February and into the early weeks of March, that some important decisions will be made regarding the economy. Or again, if they're not made consciously, there could be events that trigger, that force and compel government to make those decisions. It could be either the beginning or the actual activation of a bubble burst financially. So there could be a feeling that things are not sustainable anymore, that interest rates are going to rise, and that the printing of money will be curbed. So this is interesting in the light of what's going on here, of what we know with the Russian, I didn't show all the part, but later on I mentioned how this also applies to some kind of aggression. Let me try to find this. Consciously, there could be events that trigger, that force and compel government to make those decisions. It could be either the beginning and that the printing of money. Okay, so we got it. So this speaks about, the rise of interest rates and the sharp price of commodities, including gas, which obviously was, precipitated by the Russian-Ukraine conflict. High food prices, shortage, worsened by the cutoff of fertilizer and grain shipments from the Ukraine and Russia, are slowly resuming. It could produce widespread hunger and unrest in the developing world. And that's just an anecdote about some person speaking in Africa. So we ask ourselves how the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction will affect this situation, whether the financial bubble will burst because it's not sustainable, or whether we will, as a global economy, restore balance more gracefully. The integration of spirit and matter.
Maurice,
Yeah.
Pearl is asking a question. Would one venture to say that the 2 Earth years we were in lockdown due to COVID, that we advanced in all these post-pandemic situations equal to multiple years, if not in lockdown?
I don't understand the question.
She's saying, I think that, because we've advanced in all these different situations so quickly, was it accelerated because we were like locked down?
I believe so, but we see this both in the actual reality of what happened and, the whole market being frozen and people not going to work, and then a whole bailout from the government putting everyone in incredible debt, and then the lowering of interest rates to such an extreme that it created an excessive spending. So we see that in the field, but we also see the transits. Back in 2020, there was this Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter alignment that was also quite unusual, quite intense, and reflected those extraordinary circumstances. So, it's both earth and sky. I think both the transits and the facts on the ground will catalyze this. Anything else?
There are a couple of comments, but I think we, due to time, we can move forward.
So just a quick, reinforcing some of what Oner was saying, Jupiter, Neptune, he saw it from the Aquarius placements representing the cold. When misaligned, Jupiter and Neptune are instigator of natural events, particularly floods and plagues of massive magnitude. In their previous conjunction, we had the swine flu, recognized as a global pandemic, and typhoon killing hundreds of people. So the flooding this year has been extraordinary. Even, as we see climate change, we see unprecedented number of events and intensity. In Australia, coast endured 3 intense weather systems that led to record rain and flooding. Southern Queensland have received more rain than a year's worth in a single week. South Africa, the extreme rainfall triggered one of South Africa's deadliest disaster this century, was made more intense and more likely again because of new attribution. Pakistan floods killing 1,700 people. Immediate causes of flood were heavier than usual monsoon rain and melting glaciers that followed a severe heat wave, both of which are linked to climate change. The flooding was described as the worst in the country's history. On the 25th of August, Pakistan declared a state of emergencies. Towns washed away in Venezuela. So a lot of, extraordinary flooding. And interestingly, a lot happening in the Southern Hemisphere as well. One of the predictions that, I made and spoke about and didn't really materialize was looking at Kamala's chart, Kamala Harris. I'm going to increase the size. Like Oner was saying, like her chart is so lit up. That triple conjunction of Pluto, Mars, Venus was squaring her sun, moon exactly. And then she had the new moon on Chiron. She's now going through a second Saturn return. So I was expecting changes, crisis, a scandal to happen. And at least on the public level, nothing was reported. I don't know if, there were things happening behind closed doors, but it wasn't eventful enough to cause, to leak to the public. So, it may still happen, as Oner was mentioning, but I kind of, this was a prediction that didn't really lead anywhere. So, I'm going to now transition to Adam's brief coverage of Jupiter in Aries. Just a side note for those who are interested, you can see now the 2023 forecast if you're interested on my YouTube channel, and check it out and see, if that will come true. So looking now at, let me see here. This is Adam Ellenbass, who spoke last year at the OPA Live about Jupiter in Aries. So let's hear him.
On a collective level, I think we could see an exploration of the topics of power, dominance, violence, and conflict front and center. Even though we've had a lot of that, I think that you're going to see a lot more combustibility around this and rapid states of change and growth and understanding that can come in compared to the slow contractive grind of Saturn that we've had from Jupiter over the past couple of years. Also, the impulse to rise, defend, advocate, protest, rebel, fight against perceived injustices or oppressors. Although I will say that it's sort of like a, you might see that across the spectrum. You may see people in all different walks of life from all different political inclinations feeling that way and embodying that. So that does not mean that there's just one narrative that this energy is going to be fueling. But these are the kinds of things that I think that we're likely to see as Jupiter ingresses into Aries. And the one saving grace about it is that it's movement. It creates, it's such an inceptional sign. It points toward birth. It points toward movement and change, which I think will be welcome after dealing with the slower quality of Saturn in Aquarius or Pluto Saturn, which feels like the constrictions of the birth canal. It's just, this is a lot more like the screaming red hot baby coming out in a sense, to follow the analogy. If you think about it, the previous Jupiter in Aries transit that we have was in 2011, and it coincided with the is a Tunisian street vendor who lit himself on fire in protest to someone in the government that had like audited him unfairly or something like that. And that in turn triggered a series of events that would create what was broadly referred to as the Arab Spring, which in turn galvanized the Occupy Wall Street movement. That was a Jupiter in Aries year. So you think about that kind of energy, and a little chaotic, a little revolutionary. You've got, but there was a lot of people looking at power, the 1% versus the 99. A lot of questions about power, and what we engaged with, I think, changed us. I don't look at the future in terms of the hope for utopia personally. I tend, as a Bhakta, to think that we're in the Kali Yuga, not the age of Aquarius, right? But
so just to summarize, Adam spoke about, the rise of people speaking up and movements of the common people protesting and hitting the streets, similar to what happened 12 years ago in the Northern Africa, the Middle East, as well as in the United States. So we can definitely manifestations. If we look at protest in one of the most oppressive regimes, where the fact that we saw such courage
Maurice,
Can you
Oner,
hear
are you
me?
there? Yeah, you were cutting out on us.
Okay, sorry. So
Okay.
what I was saying basically is these protests in Iran and China reflected this extreme courage of people reaching the limits of what they could not tolerate. And it was very similar to what happened 12 years ago. So that's, I thought it was really worth sharing what Adam was highlighting then. So, Julia.
Hey there. Very interesting, everything you've been picking up on. Oh, you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, you're ready.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Yeah, so my segment that I was asked to, let's say, play, that I was asked to, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. To write about for OPA and do a segment for the 2022 update. Well, I think we were asked to write on something about it. So I picked writing about and talking about Venus and Mars cycles in 2022. And as I hear, everything that Oner and Maurice and Adam had said in that sort of time frame, about the time frame, many things overlap. But I, again, let's say an astrologer putting together what they're looking at for the whole year would add all of those, not all of those things, but definitely Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, North Node, the major conjunctions for the year to look at the, what we're going to, let's say, predict or, find the themes that are important for the year. But again, I'm concentrating on Saturn, Venus and Mars. So I just want to sort of pick up on the first paragraph, the first two paragraphs and the last paragraph of the article that I wrote. And, what really intrigued me about looking into 2022 was that it begins with Venus retrograde conjunct Pluto and ends with Mars retrograde. And, how often does that happen? And as we know, Mars and Venus cycles are a 32-year cycle to return, to the same place of the zodiac at the same time. And so, it's putting together these points that made me say it's about reactivating, redesigning, and reconfiguring, many things to do with our lives. And as astrologers, we sort of move from doing what we'd look for someone's personal reading throughout the year to then sort of on a mundane level. Although I don't do that most specifically like Oner, we have to look at the country's chart to know more specifically all these things, of course. So looking at the two Venus star points that happened in 2022, the retrograde that happened in Capricorn, and then something very unique that happened at the end of October was the first Venus star point that we've had in our lives that hasn't happened for 250 years at 29 of Libra, okay? Because Venus star points take 100 years to move, or 120 years to move backwards through a sign. We have never experienced one. So it takes us back to a time 250 years ago, okay? And I looked at that during the article. And then Mars retrograde cycle in Gemini. So how do they, you know, all connect for us? And I just want to remind or let you know how really I look at Venus, the Venus star, as very much connecting the dots in any of the astrological story, be it for a personal chart or for a mundane kind of outlook. And the more that I've been, you know, looking at it, I wrote this a long time ago, but Venus star very much picks up the cultural, scientific, political, religious, philosophical perspectives that guiding and shaping our values. So, you know, it really does come into, you know, the story that then we see develop in the world. So, you know, that's how I look at it. You might say, okay, well, science is Uranus. Again, all the astrology comes into this, but Venus, again, as a guiding principle of the values that we uphold that reshape and redesign our world. So hang on, I'm going to move this out of the way. Our videos are in my so on the left is the slides that I used for the video, and of course Venus and Mars were the rulers of the nodal axis, so you know a lot has been said about that, and you know, so again they become very important for this year as well. And you know, talking about, you know, these three main energies coming together, I used words like, you know, rebellion, discovery, invention, innovation. I used examples like Nelson Mandela and Tim Berners-Lee, who was developed, and looking back, sorry, at 1990 as the time that we could look at what kind of themes arise with these same sort of points happening in the zodiac. And also writing that it would be a year of the toppling of many leaders worldwide as a new awareness grows about many things. Now, hang on, why isn't this moving? Here we go. So yeah, again, the 3 points, the Venus star point in Capricorn, the Scorpio star point that had moved to Libra for the first time ever, and then finishing with the Mars retrograde. And the Venus star point in Libra is very much, you know, those that follow the Venus star, looking at it as, again, you know, the kind of the beginnings or the inklings of that new era that we're all going into, although this is a time frame that spans the next, you know, 10 or 12 years. So it's not, you know, just about 2022. And we all kind of, let's say, understand the Venus star somewhat and how it moves backwards in the zodiac, and the dates of this Libra star point will hop back to Scorpio in 2026. Hang on, I'll do the next slide. In 2026. So we've just had this shift that is minor, but again, we talked about that as being a big shift in consciousness as well. Okay, and then in the hang on, I'm just going to go back to this. In the article I wrote about, again, focusing on these 3 points and putting their stories together as opposed to isolating what they would mean separately, like, you know, Venus retrograde in Capricorn or Mars retrograde in Gemini or a new Libra star point. We actually put them together to make, you know, make the theme and the story or the pattern that we're seeing for this year. And just a few things that I used in the slide about Venus retrograde in Capricorn. It's a star point that happens, well, every star point happens every 4 years. This was a retrograde, but as we know, the star point actually happens 4 years prior in 2018 as the retrograde conjunction, as the superior conjunction, and so on. So it oscillates every star point every 4 years, retrograde and outer conjunction. So they become very much the same theme from a different perspective. So, you know, if we look at what Venus retrograde in Capricorn picks up, things like inflation and recession, you know, that the value of the system pretty much, and everything and the way it's all run. We know that it will bring up all the issues of women's issues and, oops, sorry, I just can't get my screen to, oh, here we go, I've moved it. Of course, we know Venus is all about love and relationships, but she's also very much about the changing culture, money and the value of things, the social, you know, the social implications of everything that we do, creativity and art and so on, women's issues, the birth rate, and so on. And Venus retrograde in Capricorn is very much about standing up for what we value against the systems that we don't, you know, are not cooperating with our needs. So, you know, we can look at it in that way. And so there's many things that, you know, let's say came to be about that topic. And again, looking back at the Venus star points in Capricorn, either retrograde or direct, they do really bring up themes about, let's say in 2018, we had the American youth uprising against gun laws in the USA and the Me Too movement very much taking off. We had Bitcoin's rapid rise. So when we see the opposite star point happen, we often see the opposite happen. So Bitcoin's rapid loss as well. The Extinction Rebellion began in 2018. Oh, sorry, it took off. Then in 2014, there were many revolutions in Africa. In 2010, another star point, the Arab Spring sparked off revolutions throughout the Middle East. And again, these aren't timed exactly when Venus and the sun were together. I use them very much like eclipse points to highlight certain areas in the zodiac. Interestingly, in 2006, Pluto was demoted and the movie Inconvenient Truth was released about climate change. So again, you know, what are our governments going to do about the climate crisis? So again, holding governments accountable in many ways. And then it was also the year that we were finding out very much information about the September 11th attacks. And you can go back to find out the particular themes, sorry, that we find with the Venus star in Capricorn. Okay. And then just quickly, relating the 5 star points that are happening in our world now, or in our zodiac now, are exactly the same as what was happening in the 1770s. So, you know, that's just super interesting to be, you know, looking at the times that we're living in and writing about the 1770s as, you know, an incredible sort of era of independence and discovery and invention, and also the shift from, you know, the ruling elites and monarchies to more, let's say, democratic and equal sort of governing systems. So that's really interesting, you know, as we've seen what's happened around the world and what we're moving towards as well, because this Venus star, let's say, is operative, you know, not just this year or last year, it's operative for a while until the next star point, which is the Aries star point, moves into Pisces in 2040, I think it is. So again, that's an interesting thing in itself, as the star point will move over 0 Aries. And so from that, you know, again, looking back at Venus and Mars, let's say for the last cycle in 1990, you know, we get a lot of interesting connections to Russia, as it became Russia after the Soviet Union at the end of 1990. Okay. And it was the fall of the Soviet Union and many independent states like Ukraine, although Ukraine only got its independence in 1991, but it was part of that sort of crash of the Soviet Union. So it's interesting that that comes back into the spotlight, you know, 32 years later. Of course, the Queen dies. Now, the Queen, we talked about the new Libra star point as being, you know, what an incredible, you know, incredible timing. it just happened a few weeks before the new Libra star point. And it's the end of an era. It's like, you know, waking up to, wow, you know, the end of an era. And that's exactly how we looked at this, you know, Libra star point. And of course, the Queen was born as this star point that just changed to Libra, of course, was in Scorpio for the last 100 years, changed in the year that she was born from Sagittarius to Scorpio. So, you know, like, again, a really kind of big and significant shift there. You know, the innovation and invention that, you know, I talked about in the article, again, summarizing all these things together, we can see in the advance of AI and images and selfies, and you can do anything, you know, you can write and publish and, you know, again, create images, and your own work is going to make all our work a lot easier through the advancement of AI. And as Maurice mentioned, of course, the fusion breakthrough of energy. Interestingly, the launch of the James Webb Telescope, of course, it's very much related to Jupiter-Neptune cycle seeding and things like that. But Hubble was launched in 1990. So that's a really interesting connection. And just again, generally the value of things, again, we've just moved from Scorpio to Libra, and of the second star point in October. So, you know, we're seeing this really sort of unstable energy. And again, the star point happened at 29 Libra. And if we remember, the Aries ingress had the moon at 29 Libra as well. Of course, you know, Venus ruled. I think it's really interesting that the world, you know, reached the next big billion milestone as well. An energy and climate crisis, you know, again, reevaluating how we deal with all of those things. And, you know, again, ending the year with Mars retrograde, the rise of the hacking and you know, all the things that are going on in social media that make you just kind of not really want to be there a lot anymore as much. Anyway, let's, this is really interesting because I think, hang on, in this last thing here, I did write, I was going to write that, you know, Elon Musk and Julian Assange were very much in the news as well. And they're, of course, got Mars stationing, both of them born only 3 days apart. But they were born at a Mars stationing in Aquarius, so, you know, very Aquarian-like characters. But as I wrote in the article, I did write about, you know, giving examples of what happens, you know, in people's lives with putting those 3 points in your chart. And, you know, back in 1990, Nelson Mandela was freed early in the year, February or something. And so looking at his chart is what I wrote about in the article. So one of the star points, the Capricorn one, was opposite his sun in the 8th house. The second star point which was still in Scorpio, happened in his 11th house, and and they're all very connected, you know, closely in his chart. And the Mars peak of the retrograde at the time was, you know, squaring his ascendant and IC, and, you know, a few other things were going on. And this is what I sort of urged everyone to do in their own charts to see how these principles will play out in your astrology over the year. And as we know, Julian Assange has been very much in the news, again, with Elon Musk for different reasons. But, you know, their fight, it's interesting because we've been fighting so much for Julian Assange's freedom in this year. You know, some people don't sort of agree with it or what he's done or whatever, but again, there's many Australians and even our Australian Prime Minister now sort of negotiating things. So although it hasn't happened yet, it's just very interesting to look at that. And if we look at their charts, they are so similar. I couldn't believe the connections. Again, both of them 8th house, sun's in Cancer, Mercury's in the 9th house, you know, Jupiter Pluto and a Jupiter Neptune conjunction, a Saturn Mercury or Saturn Gemini. Anyway, you can look back at this, but again, it's just so interesting that this sort of same theme about, you know, someone being, you know, persecuted for their truth and belief, being a big story of the year as well. Um, so I keep, because I'm using this small screen, my notes keep disappearing behind the screens, or our images. Anyway, so anyway, that's particularly interesting. So you can look at that a bit further in the replay, because I know I have to keep going. And again, looking back to the last Mars retrograde cycle in Gemini was, 2000, 2008. And as Maurice mentioned, that was also the time of the great financial crisis, the rise of Bitcoin, and, what do you call it? Being held up for what was going on there. And interestingly, WikiLeaks begins publishing documents. So we've got an overlap of that story, another kind of not financial crisis, but the interest rate rises and energy prices. And, again, the social media sort of attention on information and the fusion breakthrough happened just as Mars was at its peak opposite the sun. So I think, I did write that, Mars, or maybe it was in another article, but Mars retrogrades really do come up with some amazing feats that we've never seen. So, don't be scared of Mars retrogrades. And something else that I wrote, and this wasn't for the article, but, through the year in the Time Lords magazine for the CIA, that in the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction was also exactly parallel, meaning they were exactly in the same position of the sky. And researching that part of the sky, it's no wonder it was so wet and full of, just so wet all around the world, flooding, landslides, all that kind of thing. Not only were they just conjunct in longitude, they were conjunct in parallel. And then later in the year, at the end of April, I think it was, Mars and Jupiter met at 3 degrees of Aries, but exactly parallel to each other as well at the beginning of the zodiac. So, crossing the ecliptic line. And that hadn't happened since 1939. And of course, that relates back to, a war, a global war in a sense, like we all felt the horror and what's going on in the Ukraine. And just quickly getting back to the Jupiter-Neptune, Jupiter crossed over Neptune, the 0 point of Aries and the fixed star Shiat, and researching that part of the sky, not just the Shiat, because it's not on the ecliptic, but many cultures around the world call this area of the sky as the circlet of the southern fish as very wet and dangerous. So it's really, really interesting to just time up on that. And and this is what I wrote about the Jupiter and Aries Mars conjunction. Of course, other things to look at, and I don't think we've got time to go into it because I think my computer's about to go out, is also the astrocartography maps really show you highlights and spots in the world and the Aries ingress. And we talk about this at, CIA free panels and that kind of thing throughout the year. But, we can see that the North Node for the Aries ingress was right through London. And of course, we know how many shifts happened there politically, as well as, the Queen dying. We can see that the sun went straight through Moscow or the Eastern Ukraine. The sun also went through southern Japan, which is where Shinzo Abe was assassinated. So all the sun lines actually show, very much where the leaders were changed throughout the year, interestingly. And then the Pluto moon lines, as we know, Pluto is square the moon in the ingress chart, places of great devastation. So anyway, that's besides the point. And just quickly, the geodetic chart, again, I know I'm very interested in about the Russian Aquarian connection. Do you know what I mean? Like as the sign ruling Russia. But the geodetic map shows us that Uranus is in Taurus, of course, and in the geodetic map, it's right through the eastern Ukraine. This is, of course, for the ingress, and Jupiter has moved back and forward over the 0 point through Greenwich throughout the year. And the North Node is at the ingress was in Tehran. So I just wanted to show those last few points that have, again, things that I always think about. More in our Time Lords magazine. The next one is coming up on February the 5th. Another great edition. You have to kind of be an email subscriber to get it for free. And then, of course, more from me at the CIA and all the wonderful people that come and teach at our academy. So join us there, and thank you, Maurice. Sorry.
Wow, thank
Maybe
you.
that was a little bit fast, but yeah, I'm panicking because I have to go and get my power cord.
Talk about Mars powering.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
I think it's good. I think, the important thing here is not to get lost in details. It's to get to the real pertinent nuggets. And I think what I find extraordinary in this exercise is that many of us came to similar conclusions through different channels.
Yeah.
Even the weather, we each looked at different alignments and came up with similar conclusions, as well as the economy and the aggression, that happened in the war. So I think that's the power of astrology, that, the truth is reflected in many different ways. And I think we can really be proud of astrology, how reliable it is, how it has, for the most part, really described accurately what we've experienced around the world. So I think it's both educational to see some of our misses, and where there were some inadequacies or things that we could not anticipate. But for the most part, we were really exploring those themes accurately. And if only, people in position of influence and the greater public could benefit from that, maybe, we can hope that it would provide, first of all, more perspective, but also prevent crisis. I'm looking at 2023, and I'm looking at what's going to happen with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. And just like all of us here anticipated that something really intense is going to happen between these countries, what if the leaders now would read these articles? And
I reckon they do secretly.
Well, but then, I hope it makes a difference, that they don't just discard it. But I would like to think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you see somewhere, it's going to be an earthquake, or it's kind of, sometimes, as we know in astrology, it's really quite profound, and you can really see it, right? You can really see it because of various things. I mean, what would what are we going to do? Like the town crier, there will be an earthquake on southern Italy. Please get out of there. I mean, again, we kind of feel hopeless in certain ways as well, don't we? Like, what can we do?
But what we can do, I mean, an earthquake is one thing, but if we speak about famine, if we speak about, inflation and economic regulation, these are things that are in our control, that we could maybe mitigate. When we see Jupiter, Neptune coming together, there is a bubble burst, things are going to get out of control. So I don't know. I think that even just having reflection, just knowing, oh, I'm having a Pluto transit, that's why I feel this way. is already helpful.
Yes, definitely.
But I'd like to
Yeah.
thank everyone. I don't want to keep everyone through the night. And, you know, Oner, I hope you get some more sleep.
But it was
Go
really
ahead.
great. It was really great. Thank you for both for your great presentations. I really enjoyed, and thank you for moderation and for everything you found from my article. Maurice, thank you very much, and
Yes.
thank you, Carol, for presenting us and everything. It was great, really, to do that. Let's do it
was my
every year.
pleasure.
Every year.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to do this because, again, like I said at the beginning, we just kind of roll into the next year and, oh, yeah, we said that somewhere. You know,
Yeah.
I personally never get a chance to go, I know I said something, but, you know, to find it, like, you know.
Well, we
Yeah.
are getting
So
an
it's good to make
incredible
us do
amount
it.
of wonderful responses in the chat box, and I won't read them all because it's getting late. And I do appreciate so many people from all over the world coming because so many different time zones. I know poor Oner woke up very, very early. It was 5 a.m. when this started. And I know it was early for you as well. So, Julia, so thank you. And for all that
I'm off to the
attended.
beach.
Yes, she's by the
Oh,
beach. And for
Send us
those on the East
some
Coast in the
sunshine.
snow, they'll be jealous.
Yeah, oh, the sun just came out. It was a few days of rain, but anyway, all good. Thanks for having me, and thanks, Maurice, for organizing and OPA to putting it together.
Thank you so much. And for all of you that are still on with us, I will be sending this recording out to you in the next few days. So be sure that you look for that recording link in your email. It'll also list all of their websites. So please be sure to go and look at their website, see what they have to offer. They're doing wonderful consultations and they have classes and courses and books and so many wonderful things. So be sure to check out all of their services and
Happy New Year,
definitely
everyone.
start the new year. Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy Mars Direct.
Happy 2023, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.